psychologists. Now, this isn't to say all behavioral psychologists are bad guys. You read John Rosemond. I mean, there's hardly anything you would disagree with him. But there is a cadre of very leftist behavioral psychologists, and always has been, and behavioral psychiatrists that really have done a job on us. And when you say, you know, anything in the computer can't be eradicated, guess what? Morality can be. Mm-hmm. And that's where the rub comes in, because we have now endured 40 years of very heavy-handed anti-family, pro-sexual liberation, enlightened atheism. Oh, I love that one. You know, this has been ground into kids, first a little bit at a time, first kind of snuck into things like social studies, and see, they don't have history, they don't have geography, social studies. And people aren't getting it. They don't realize why these names of curriculum that we were all brought up with have changed a little bit. They think, oh, they're just being modernistic. Well, no, not exactly. And pretty soon they wind up with a child they don't even know. This child comes home using language, wanting to dress, wanting to talk, and see motion pictures of a type that even the baby boomers, they just want to basically throw up.
Yes. Well, you know, and as you share with us, I think that many who are watching today can relate to this. And having been a teacher, it became very apparent to me that a lot of what was being done was really educating affectively, not effectively, but affectively. What is the difference between effective and affective?
If you're being effective, that means you're being successful at something. If you're being affective, that means that it is based on the emotions.
That's right.
Knee-jerk reactions is what they want. They do not want critical thinking. Mm-hmm. They do not want logic. Mm-hmm. They want you to think knee-jerk. Mm-hmm. They want you to think with your gut. Mm-hmm. And that's not a good recipe for sustaining a republic.
No, and as you speak here, of course, I'm very well aware of the fact that our emotions have a part to play in our lives, but our emotions are subservient to our intellect and to our will. But we have thrown this topsy-turvy in our contemporary culture, and often when I'm out speaking for the Women of Grace groups, or I'm invited to speak to a large group of people in a conference setting, I remind them of the fact that, you know, faith is a theological virtue that resides in the intellect, but it is expressed, it is exercised in the will. Our emotions have to be subservient to that. We don't make decisions based on emotions, but this is just the opposite of what our children have been taught, and what has been not only taught to them, but what they've been conditioned to do by the repetition of these kinds of exercises within our school classrooms. Now, this is for this is to no end. This has a purpose behind it, and there is an agenda behind it, much of which has come to us through the National Education Association and the old AFT, which was the other teachers' union. But the NEA has been one of the most outspoken proponents of this. And it's informed by a socialism that wants to really put a wedge between the parent and the child. Am I right?
Absolutely. And it's not just the National Education Association. The Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching was actually giving the NEA their marching orders for a while, denouncing testing and that sort of thing. But they were denouncing academic testing. They just weren't telling people that. But the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, and the worst of the worst, the Aspen Institute for Humanistic Studies, which I went back in the grants, and I found that Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching and the Aspen Institute for Humanistic Studies were trading money back and forth. You know, if one couldn't afford something this year, then the other one would, you know, cover it, and that's what was happening. And Aspen Institute's probably the biggest religion-bashing organization, especially Christianity-bashing organization in the nation.
Yes.
And maybe in the world. I mean, because it started really pretty much in Berlin. So now it's at Y, Maryland, too. It's been at Y, Maryland. And it's really interesting if you read the papers, because, you know, that's where that little boy that was found off the coast of Florida, and that's where he was put, was in Aspen Institute before he was carted back to Cuba. Gonzalez, Evan Gonzalez, I believe it was the name.
I think that's the name,
And he was put in the Aspen Institute. And what they do is wine and dine journalists. That's their big thing. And I saw even somebody that I worked for, whose name I won't mention, with a big plaque on the wall. Aspen Institute. I passed this seminar course for Aspen Institute for Humanistic Studies. And I'm like, uh-oh.
What's going on?
What's going on here? Yeah.
Exactly. And of course, I definitely want to mention, so that you have an understanding, that these books that we're offering, that Beverly has written, are extremely well documented. And she has done her homework, 3 decades of research into these books. Beverly, you are well renowned in this area. You've done dozens of television interviews, radio interviews. You are a frequent contributor to numbers of magazines. You're sought after for information in this area, because very few people have done the kind of study that you have done with this level of integrity. And so when you talk with us about these things, you know, you're not pulling this out of the air. This is based on serious research and quite a bit of knowledge that has come to you through that research. So when we go into our next segment, I want for you to begin to identify for us some of the terms that we used, because they're frightening terms. They have a strange sound to them. They sound like something out of Brave New World, and we're tempted to say, oh no, that can't be happening. But I'm telling you, friends, it is happening, and it's been happening, and the information that has been accumulated is information that is used information, and that information is used for very specific purposes and for a very specific end. So stay with us. We're talking about a serious topic today. We look forward to having you back with us, and we will be right back. Welcome back, friends. Our guest today is Beverly Eckman. She is the author of 2 best-selling books, probably more than that. This one is her latest, Walking Targets, How Our Psychologized Classrooms Are Producing a Nation of Sitting Ducks. And this one, an international bestseller, Cloning of the American Mind, Eradicating Morality Through Education. You know, Beverly, when we went to the break, you were sharing information with us that I know for many individuals is just almost overwhelming to take in. But you were telling us about the way in which these many tests have been given to our children that are affective tests. They're not really measuring their capacities in any given academic discipline, but it's really about opinions and beliefs that are held by the child and by the child's family. Now, you know, my question to you is, why would anybody have a vested interest in trying to gather this data from children?